And good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hey, let me make a slight announcement here, very important. Lots and lots of interest in the DVDs of the McDermott-Preston debate. And as I announced in my last segment, I've received word from the videographer that he's almost halfway through producing the masters, doing all of the editing. And so I'm very excited about that. Also in the inquiries about the book, haven't yet heard from the court reporter, but she is due to have initial installments of the manuscript to me within the next week or so. So I'm very excited about getting that information and getting it produced and getting it to you. And so be sure to get your order in for the DVDs. As I said, Lord willing, nothing happens, I'll have the masters here very, very shortly. Oh, and by shortly, I mean shortly. I don't mean a long time off. Okay. Well, I've been sharing with you some thoughts on resurrection. Very clearly, when most people take a look at the doctrine of, quote, preterism, unquote, and I much prefer the term covenant eschatology, by the way, but be that as it may, really the main sticking point is the doctrine of the resurrection. Because we've been so indoctrinated with the idea that a biological body has to come out of the ground for it to be resurrection. And this is simply not what the Bible teaches. Now, believe me, I was raised believing that myself. It was difficult for me to be able to begin to see what the Bible actually teaches on that. But when I began to see that, it just became clearer and clearer that that is not what the Bible teaches. Well, I've been sharing with you that in order to understand the Bible doctrine of resurrection, we have to understand the Bible doctrine of death. Going back to the garden. And I keep going back to this, and it's interesting to me, some of the emails that I've gotten. People say, but Don, I believe that the death of Adam was physical death. Well, that's what I believed at one time too. The point of it is, God said, in the day you eat thereof, you will surely die. Now, the Hebrew of the text is, in dying, you shall die. 2 points to make very quickly. Some say this is simply a Hebraism that says you will certainly die. Well, okay, let's run with that for a moment, okay? In the day that you eat thereof, you will certainly die. How does that negate the demand for Adam and Eve dying the day they ate the fruit? If anything, an appeal to the quote, Hebraism of you will surely die confirms the reality that they had to die that day. And some people, it just seems to me, are so, may I use the term as kindly as possible, are so desperate to avoid that language. Now, what happened to the people who say, well, the Bible says what it means what it says? And all of a sudden they come to the language in which God said, the day you eat, you'll surely die. And they say, oh, well, yeah, but they didn't die until 900 years. One respondent said, well, the Bible makes it clear that they didn't die for 900 years. Then what did God mean when he said, in the day you eat, you will surely die? 900 years later, folks, is not in the day you eat. So, once again, when we look at the language, in the day you eat, you will surely die. To emphasize the surety of the language of, in dying you shall die, simply demands more than ever that God was telling them that of a certainty the day they ate, they would most assuredly die. Adam and Eve didn't die physically that day. The definition of physical death is the separation of the spirit from the body, James 2:26. Unless you can show where Adam and Eve somehow, some way, died biologically that day, then we must look for another identity of the death of the garden. And the only way to look, the only place to look, is in the fact, the undeniable fact, that they were separated from God, which, by the way, is the definition of death. Death, both in the Hebrew and the Greek, means separation. They were separated from God, from spiritual life, that very day. They didn't have to wait 900 years to be separated from God. They truly did die that day. And that means that the death, which is the focus of the resurrection, the eschatological resurrection, was the restoration of spiritual life, not the restoration of biological life. Hey, thanks for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. We'll have a whole lot more to say about this. We'll see you on the flip side.